without further ado, why don't we introduce ourselves as step number one here? My name is Matt Giffune. I'm one of the co-founders of Occupier. We are a lease management software company that provides transaction management, lease administration, and lease accounting software to businesses that occupy multiple leased locations. Typically, our clients in the retail side are either franchise operators, corporate store owners themselves, emerging brand retailers, anybody that has either a growing portfolio or a static portfolio of several leases. Our typical customer size is anywhere from like 25 to 30 leases and up. So we've been in business for about 6 years. We had a booth at Vegas this year. Maybe you stopped by. If you did, hopefully you grabbed one of our I Loves Leases t-shirts. Those things seem to be catching some popularity around the ICSC circuit. And happy to be here with you. I'll kick it over to Kyle.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for having me. And yeah, you guys definitely had, like we were talking about, one of the best locations, I think, at ICSC, right next to that pickleball court. So yeah, my name's Kyle Inserra. I'm a commercial real estate advisor here in New York City, focusing on mainly restaurants, nationally and here in the New York metro market, including Westchester County, Fairfield County. And yeah, I was at ICSC, did a quick turnaround there. Like I was saying, we just recently had a baby, so my time is kind of limited. But yeah, I was excited to be back at the show and kind of just experience it again. You know, it was really only my third time going. In the last 8 years, I've gone 3 times. But it was I thought it was great. I mean, I don't know anything about the stats or what ICSC thought of it, but I thought it was a fantastic experience.
Yeah, I think it was my fourth time going. I've actually been there multiple times, but in different roles. So my first time was as a broker, and that was cool. But I didn't really have a stake in the ground there. I was just kind of going around trying to meet people. And then previous company I worked at called BTS does software for the landlord. So I was essentially demoing landlord asset management software to all the big REITs and the big owners that were there. And this last 2 or 3 years here with Occupier has been great because we're diving in with all like the main tenants who are trying to kind of figure out how to expand their portfolio. So kind of cool to see it from three different perspectives. But Kyle, I think you're kicking it off here with
Yeah.
a question number one.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I was just talking about the other day with a client of mine. This was the year of the store, right, for ICSC. And everyone's talking about data. Everybody has data, but I think it's crucial to talk about what data is most important. So what do you guys over at Occupier find to be like the key points to focus on in terms of real estate data?
That's a good question. I think if you look at our subset of customers who are retailers, which is over 50% of them at this point, what we look at in terms of how we're, I guess, evaluating how well the retail market is doing is stores in the pipeline. So a lot of our customers are growing retailers. They may have been like, you know, digital to consumer brands that have kind of reached that point of saturation on the internet where they're like, you know what, we want to get into brick and mortar, either to create an experience that draws people in for an omni-channel type of experience, or look, we could just sell more merchandise if we have a bigger footprint of stores. So, typically our most successful kind of go-to-market motion with signing up new customers are those customers who are opening new stores, whether that is, like I said, a retailer like Buck Mason, for example, or Squeeze Massage, who are just like opening up dozens and dozens of locations. Shout out to Kat Reyes at Squeeze Massage. We saw her had some good times out there in Las Vegas. Or they're like franchise operators. So I have 40 Dunkin' Donuts, but I just bought another franchise territory, and I'm gonna blow it up to 100. So we really, on the retail side, we look at store growth. And some of the other things that we look at from a data perspective are, we don't publish any of this data, but because we're holding these leases for our clients and we're very hands-on from like a customer success and account management perspective, we're onboarding all this data. And so like we have a little bit of insight into kind of where the markets are, like where are rents going? Are they going up? Are they going down? What are the more competitive geographies that emerging retailers are looking at? So stuff like that kind of draws us into that kind of target demographic of like growing retailers.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have access to, I mean, the lease is everything, right? So, I mean, that's a ton of information that can provide insight. And I think I can see why that doesn't really get out. That's right. I mean, you're not going to put that out there for everybody to chew on, but I would imagine those are pretty insightful pieces of data. I mean, I personally would love to know what's going on there because we all are, as brokers, are always trying to find out what something leased for, what's kind of which way it's trending, what the landlord's preferences are in the market, as the economy types of shifts with different types of landlords. So yeah, I would imagine those are pretty key pieces of data to have a hold of.
Yeah, for sure. And that kind of segues right into my first question for you, which is, Kyle, as you have tenant rep boots on the ground, what storefront trends are you seeing in the market as, restaurants, which is your wheelhouse, or just generally retailers are looking in their expansion mode?
Yeah, I mean, definitely smaller footprint. Number one, I think for most of the concepts that I'm running with, I wouldn't say they are all in on saying, oh, we were 2,200 square feet, now we're 1,500 square feet. I think it's more like a backup, at least in my experience. It's been like, they only have this size space. Well, we can go down to that. Can they demise the space? It's a little bit too big as is. Can we cut it in half? Maybe we can make it work otherwise. And that's with franchisees rather, and with independents. And I know that, franchisees they want it to be the same size box. They want to be the same size width. They want everything to be, as cookie cutter as possible so they can just kind of roll these out, right? They can bring their equipment in, they can bring their design team in, and they know kind of basically what they're dealing with, as an efficiency. But I've even seen some of our franchise clients, be more flexible that way. Other than that, I would say, pop-ups are big for restaurants, taking advantage of some of these spaces that have been tough to lease, or just in general, finding collaboration partners and to do little pop-ups to test new concepts or just test new markets, aside from the ghost kitchen stuff. That's another big one. And I guess I would have to say tech, right? Like a lot of these guys now are, and we spoke about it on this panel at ICSC actually, so focused on technology and customer data and leveraging that into growing the bottom line and to growing their footprint. So it's going as far as landlords now looking at these restaurants, and if they're a new tenant coming to the market, they're assessing, their current tech stack or what they're doing from a digital standpoint, from a technology standpoint. Are they easy to order from? Is their menu, visible on the phone? Like little things like that. Because I heard from one of the panelists there that were like, we're actually seeing some restaurants that we either misjudged or, they kind of just don't have their act together from a tech standpoint. And we feel like we can maybe help them. So it's become a big piece of the puzzle, I think, when assessing new tenants is how much do they get it? How much do they get the fact that how they show up digitally matters? So I would definitely say those are the three most common. But I think overall, the brands that I'm working with, retail or restaurant, they are adaptable. They're trying to be as adaptable to the market as they can just to continue to grow their concepts.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I had a follow-up question for you, but then I thought of another one, which was like, I was going to ask you, like, how flexible are landlords becoming in terms of like accommodating for these like new smaller footprint stores or different concepts? And I would imagine they have to be flexible given the market, like especially in like downtown areas where maybe like the lunch crowd isn't there like 5 days a week and the dinner crowd isn't there at all because people are just like working from home and stuff like that. But then that insight that you had with respect to landlords actually like evaluating the digital footprint of a restaurant, like I never would have thought of that. That makes so much sense because as the consumer, if you like hear about a restaurant or you look something up and you're like, "Oh, I want to try this place," but like you can't find their menu on your phone, you're like, well,
Yeah.
skip this one. I'm not going, you know?
I mean, I've gotten so petty about this stuff. There are a couple places around here where I live that are just a pain in the neck to deal with from online. We're on our phones all the time. And with a family and just with this kind of career, everybody, right? They're kind of rushing around and we order from these places most of the time because we don't have something at home, right? Or we're like
Right.
in a rush or whatever. So it's got to be convenient. And the ones that are not convenient, and some of them I really like as restaurants, I love to go there. It's just so frustrating when you can't, the PDF menu where you kind of have to zoom in
Yeah.
or like in and like that type of stuff. But yeah, it matters. And in regards to like suburban markets, or maybe not as dense urban markets, these landlords also need to take into account a space for third-party delivery drivers for restaurants because I don't know if you've ever been to a restaurant when they're like Uber drivers or DoorDash
Dude.
folks, like
Yeah.
it's a nightmare,
Yeah.
right? Like you're like in the way, they're behind you, they're trying to get the order. This person's not the person. It's like, and it can impact the fact that like people don't want to be there, and I think drivers aren't going to want to come back because it's seemingly like the restaurant doesn't have their act together because they're double parked and they got to run in and run out. So it's can get a little complicated, I think.
Yeah. We're going off topic a little bit here, but I don't know, like the last time you came to Boston, but Boylston Street is like the main strip in Back
Mhm.
Bay, and you have a Chick-fil-A, a Chipotle, a Cava, a Dig, like literally all next door to each other. And it's like it's like a motorcycle bar. Like it's like that's what it looks like out front because you have all the scooter drivers
Yeah,
and bike drivers just like pouring out into the sidewalk. And as a consumer, it makes me just want to avoid that whole area
right.
altogether. It's
Yeah.
like, when they built those stores, they didn't accommodate at all for that dynamic of drivers constantly coming in and out and having to park and disrupt the foot traffic and stuff like that. So totally new, you know?
Yeah, it's you see that here obviously in the city too with all those guys lining up outside of these places because they're waiting for their phones to go off and pick up an order and make a couple bucks. I get it, but it can really severely impact the bottom line of the restaurant if it's not set up because drivers, I'm sure you've experienced it probably like on an Uber, they'll just kind of realize like, I'll go over there and then they cancel because they're like, too much traffic in that side or I don't want to deal with it. But
Right.
if it starts to get a reputation like that restaurant is a pain in the neck to pick up from. Not going, not going, not
Yep.
going, not going. So yeah, it sounds petty, but it's a real issue.
Yeah.
Pretty wild. I mean, it's something that I don't think anybody thought of. So um, you guys deal with influencers, right? Do you guys have any or like any like? Do you see any sort of influencer impact on consumer stuff, on consumer buying decisions, or?
Um,
Did you talk?
and
Did you? We had a panel there. I know it was kind of a hot topic. I don't know if you.
yeah, I mean, we've had guests on our podcast that are deep into the influencer marketing effect on like consumer buying habits and stuff like that. So, like, our insight into it is, on our podcast, the Fully Occupied show, we try to create a forum where people like you can come on and talk about like things that they're seeing in the retail and restaurant space and how those are affecting consumer buying habits, but also we kind of tie it back to real estate because that's what we're experts in.
Mm.
So, you know, we had Sean Walchef on here recently on the show recently, and his whole business is built around, building your influence as a restaurant before like you actually open your doors. So, what we're seeing is like, the online shopper is like the like first thing you need to solve for. And so like if you could have an influencer, whether that's a person or a brand or something that is drawing people to your brand, let's just say you have a taco truck or something, right? Like you're going to need to market the crap out of that thing in
Oh
order to
yeah.
get people to show up. You can't just park on the corner and expect like the line to like go around the block. So it goes back to the digital footprint thing. So I think like the influencer effect is, you see somebody popular, somebody that like you like or whatever, who's eating those tacos, and then they're in your Instagram feed all of a sudden, they're in your TikTok feed, you're going, they're dropping cookies on
Yeah.
you. So they're following you everywhere. So it's goes beyond obviously retail and restaurants, but it's a real thing because, restaurants seem, and I have no data to back this up, but it seems like they're coming and going faster than ever. And the ones that tend to kind of like stick are the ones that have that influence. And whether that's through an actual like person as the influencer or just like a really good brand strategy and like a really strong digital footprint, those tend to seem to be the ones that like, I don't know, have more staying power.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting too from like the influencer conversation is interesting because traditional advertising, like when we grew up, you wanted the celebrities to pitch certain products, right?
Yeah.
Because they had people saw them, they knew who they were, and Michael Jordan bought Nike and drank Coke or whatever, Gatorade, whatever. I don't even know if he drank Coke, but Gatorade for sure. You want to drink Gatorade, but I know, and I've experienced, and maybe you've seen it like up by you, is the local influencers are the ones that are having, I think, the most impact. So
Yeah,
there
the
you have,
people that look like you and me, right? Like,
yeah, yeah, and they relate. Like they tell you a story that you can relate to. Like they're not just shilling a product, and they're not out there with every single product. They're very specific to kind of like what they're going after. And I think that makes a difference. How you connect with how the brand connects with the particular influencer. Like are they everyday guys, or are they somebody that you recognize from a platform that is maybe not 100 million followers, but they're local to your neighborhood. That type of stuff I think resonates a lot deeper with retailers, in particular franchisees. Because the franchisee may have a relationship, franchisor may have a relationship with a bigger influencer, but the
right.
local person, needs somebody in the community to connect them to the community to make them feel like that's the one store that they should be going to. So I think that's a interesting shift in the whole sort of, I guess, advertising marketing dynamic.
Yeah, I haven't really thought about that from the franchise perspective, but if you think about it, you're like, yeah, I know Steph Curry. He's the guy that eats the Subway subs on TV, but like, is the Subway in my neighborhood a good one to go to? Like,
Yeah,
somebody
right.
local is going to know that, right?
Yeah, and I think that local person could be, a teenager. It could be, somebody a little bit more prominent in the community or from the area that, can speak to it. But even like the connection on the items, like Subway could be pushing, $5 footlongs or whatever, but this guy needs help selling something else. So I think the ability to leverage that local influencer community, particularly on the franchisee side, is a big piece of their success.
Another theme that seems to be still running pretty strong in retail is this concept of experiential retail concepts. So, like, what is fueling that? Like, how is that becoming such like a big thing?
I think they're just trying to be interesting. They're trying to compete with the online, and I think um, a lot of that is the experiential part. I think became so front and center when we were kind of locked up and kind of clamoring for this connection with people, right? So now if you can go into a store and, try on, there's a running shoe store over here, and you could try on the shoes and you can actually run in them. And they have like a wall up where you can run the Grand Canyon, you can run along the beach in Hawaii. I think it's a weird thing, right? Because you can have that sort of digital, you're so immersed in something digital and it becomes cool and you feel like you have this strong connection. But then you can go into a store like a Warby Parker and try on the glasses that you tried on virtually at home. I think it's all about just connecting to your customer, showing like really focusing on that, who that person is and what they do. Like I think golf club places were one of the first that kind of did this type of thing where you can try the golf clubs. I remember that even when I was a kid, like in the store. I thought that was like the coolest thing. You can actually hit the golf clubs there. But yeah, obviously more and more of that. I think they're just trying to compete with online's ability to directly target that core customer, right? So if you know who they are and you can give them what they want and allow them to put their hands on the product, I think that's a sort of like a one up on the digital stuff.
Yeah. or it's like a supplement to the digital stuff, right? Like you're targeting these people online. And you know, if you're like me, I'm kind of hesitant to buy something online that haven't touched or tried or used.
Yeah.
So if I could go into the Dick's House of Sport and step into a golf simulator for a half an hour and test out 5 different types of golf clubs, then that's gonna it's gonna accelerate my buying behavior for sure.
Yeah. There's definitely some things like I don't want to buy online, right? I still want to go to the store. I mean, that's for sure. I think some people depends on who they are, right? Like, well, what they prefer, but I'm big on the convenience for things that I know work, like everyday type stuff. But I think shopping, like clothes and everything, I think I still need to go to the store. Do you buy any clothes online, or is it all strictly you got to go try it?
I only get my clothes at conferences like ICSC where I could just get free t-shirts like the one I'm wearing. But yeah, like if I find something that fits really well and I know it's the right size and like fits me, then I'll make a repeat purchase online. But I usually try to try things on. Like I hate returning things that are delivered to my house.
Yes.
So I'd rather go to a store, try it on, decide not to buy it, then order it online, get it, realize it doesn't
Oh,
fit, and then send it back. You know?
yeah. Or like you find something that works and you're like, what is it like? What is this shirt? And then you look it up and you just go online, buy like 10 of them. Like, oh,
Exactly.
yeah, I do that too. So I'm guilty of that. Um, but do you think like in general, like technology, websites, online shopping, omnichannel, all these buzzwords around technology, how do you feel that that's going to continue to, affect the retail real estate and the overall, I guess, shopping experience for consumers? And I think I feel like we're kind of just always evolving.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that comment you made earlier about the landlord assessing the restaurant that's going to come into their space based on like their digital footprint. Because I don't know about you, but if I'm shopping for something, or maybe I'm clicking on an ad and I'm getting into their website, like it needs to be easily navigated. Like
Yeah.
if I go to, I don't know, let's just say I want to, book a massage and I have no idea who's around me or what's around me. I'm probably going to go with the company that has the most easily navigatable website to like book that appointment. If like I get on and I can't figure out how much it costs
Oh
or
yeah.
where the location is or what the different service packages are, then I'm probably just going to be like, this is confusing. I'm out. I'm going to go to the next one. So I think like it's just like anything, like the ease of use is, I think, what is going to draw people in and have them become repeat customers. I'm not 100% sold on like tech in the store being what's going to make me buy something. Like, yeah, it's nice to go try out the golf clubs and, like hang out on the rock climbing wall and stuff to see like how this piece of equipment feels. I don't know. Like in the store, I think you're there to just like interact with like the product that you're buying. And if the product's good, you're going to buy it. I don't think there's any sort of like technology that's going to like push me towards a certain product, but I just think it's all about like ease of discovery of what you're looking for. Things are so curated right now that
Yeah.
like it would be awesome if like you walk into a store and they have a profile on you already. Now, obviously, there's a lot of data that needs to be shared and stuff, but like, hey, we noticed that you bought this, and this from us over the last like 3 or 4 years. Like, go check out this stuff because this might actually be of interest to you. And I think
Yeah.
stores are starting to become smarter like that. It's almost like that kind of real personal feel to it. And with all the targeted marketing that's happening right now, like you'd think that would be something that is like doable.
Oh yeah, I mean in restaurants, I think that stuff it's already in place for a lot of it. I mean, your POS integrates with your seating, your online reservation platform. So let's say you have Resi or you have 7 rooms, whatever you have, you can link your POS to that, so you know that hey, last time Matt came in, he had this beer, he ordered this for his entree, and he had this for dessert, and he's been in this amount of times. Wow, pretty consistent from a hospitality perspective, you can now go and say, "Can I get you that IPA that you had last time?"
Yeah.
You guys gonna have, you can ask your wife or your buddies, you're like, hey, you guys want one too? Or last time I noticed you were in, because all those notes are there. The restaurant can take that next step in their appreciative meetings and say things like, hey, okay, this is your section, this is who you have, this is sort of the rundown. This is who they are, this is their profile as a customer. And I think that's the overarching theme. It's the same thing you're talking about. Same thing how like Amazon barrages you with like, oh, you like this? Maybe you like these 20 things too. I think it's all kind of the same thing. That's getting to know your core customer, their likes and dislikes.
Yeah. Um, that kind of segues into the next question is like, as a broker, you're advising these companies on like ultimately like where to locate their place.
Mhm.
And obviously there's all this other stuff that goes into it, but like how do these other aspects like impact like the actual like location strategy and the site selection process? Um, we,
Yeah,
you know,
I think I mean, obviously there's probably not a universal answer for everybody. Um, I think it's the brands that are succeeding and growing, because I think the groups that are getting stuck are the ones that are like, this is who we are. If it's not this, then we don't want it. And, there's always been a certain degree of adaptability needed as a concept. But I think from an opportunity perspective, brands are looking at different types of real estate. You mentioned Sean Walchef and a good buddy of mine, and his restaurant now is on a naval base, right? Like he's in a stadium. He's not so pigeonholed into, I just want to do, 3,000 square feet, want this many seats and roll it out that way. I think, from an experiential point of view, I think the ability for consumers to experience you in a lot of different ways. If you can get the brisket sandwich at the stadium, you can also get it at the airport. You can also pull up to the restaurant. You can order online for delivery. I think that's kind of what the goal is. And then, omni-channel, a big buzzword, but I think that's for restaurants specifically. I think the ones that look at it that way and can execute, right? That's not easy to do. That can execute their concept in so many different formats. I think that is what will allow them to continue to grow. But that's my advice to these groups, and the conversation we have is, obviously you'd always say like, okay, how low can you go and how high can you go? What's markets are you considering? And those types of general questions. But a lot of different opportunities pop up, and I think a restaurant's ability to, you know, connect with these different opportunities and take advantage of them is going to what ultimately lead to their growth. I mean, seeing it all over the place. I think with a lot of these other concepts, and independents, I think are the most adaptable. So interesting to watch what they do.
yeah, sure. I was at a Mets game this past weekend actually, and there was a barbecue stand. A buddy of mine owns like this awesome barbecue chain. I'm like, I didn't even know he had like an outpost here in City Field. I was like, I'm going there.
Yeah, it's cool. It's those things are, people say, that's not a huge money maker, but I think, it drives awareness. So now they know that you're at City Field, you see however many thousands of people show up per season at the Mets game, they're going to recognize you on the street. So I think it always comes down to leadership, who's leading the charge there. And I think that's probably never been more important from a real estate site selection perspective, is who's in charge of the real estate department, and what's their thought process on
Yeah,
growing these concepts.
totally.
Um, we talked about, the store formats, and retailers are kind of, focusing on technology, but do you think retailers and restaurants should look at this new, technology adoption for their internal process and operations as well?
Yeah, I mean yes, like that's kind of the reason we exist as a company is like we've found that, especially coming out of COVID, um, we started growing really fast among restaurants specifically and retailers specifically because their internal processes were almost like non-existent in terms of managing their real estate. So if you use COVID as an example, like we had one customer who had like a portion of their portfolio on occupier and um, immediately called us and were like, we need to get all of these other leases into this system because we have no idea what our obligations are, our risks are, our opportunities are in our portfolio among this subset of like landlords that we have because the laws, the COVID regulations that were happening were like state by state. So it's like we could potentially have to terminate all of our leases in like Florida because, well, that's the bad example. One state because they're shutting all they're not allowing people in. Or you know what? We have all these stores in the pipeline that we're ready for like sit down restaurants. We're gonna try to like convert them to drive through concepts because we know that they're letting like people keep drive through concepts open. So really what like it comes down to is just like strategy and like dollars and cents, right? Like where could I find opportunities in my portfolio to either downsize spaces, get rid of spaces that aren't working, or double down on things that are working. And without like having all of that data and workflow centralized in one place, you're chasing down information in PDF files and like trying to get legal to like tell you what's going on. At least you're a broker, you probably get calls from customers all the time. It's like, hey, when is my renewal option up again? Like I feel like I owe this landlord money, but I don't know if I do. Like that type of stuff. All those problems just go away if you streamline it internally.
I tell you what, I thought of you guys immediately recently. I had a local guy, he's got a couple units, but his the landlord was selling the building, sort of a mixed use multifamily. He's on the ground floor. And he wants to sell the business. And he goes to, we go to list the business for sale, take over the lease type of deal. He's like, we just exercised our 5-year options. The landlord turns out said, you never exercised those options. You missed the date. So I just assumed that you were leaving. So a lot of things wrong with that dynamic,
Right.
but their inability to stay on top of their lease expirations or their option, timelines cost them the business. He locked the door. And he's like, see you later. So he sold the business. The new guy came in and said, oh, this guy was paying a below market rent. I have the opportunity to buy the building, jack up the rent. That's kind of the situation that I want. That's what I'm looking for, right? And rather unfortunate, but it was just like that little oversight and not using technology like Occupier to stay on top of that stuff. I mean, yeah, you need it. Like me personally, I need a dashboard. Like I need to know my key metrics. Like I don't want to have to sift through everything. And I think obviously for a lease, something that's so critical, it's something that you do just kind of, all right, here's a PDF, put it in a folder on Google Drive, and I'll worry about it in 10 years. And that's probably not the best way to handle it.
No, you're gonna run into, I mean, maybe for like 3, 4 restaurants or stores or something, you could kind of handle it. But like once you get up into that 7, 10, 15 like location, like it just becomes an administrative nightmare, especially with more people. What we found actually over the last several years building this company is that more people within the business actually need access to the real estate information than like you actually thought. Maybe you thought it was like whoever is building the stores or whoever the CEO is only needs to know lease information, but no, like the accountants do, people that pay the bills do,
Yeah.
everybody that builds out the space. Anytime you want to retrofit something, you got to look at the lease to make sure it's like you could actually do that within the 4 walls of the space. Like who's the landlord? Who do I contact for that? It's a lot. It's a lot bigger than people think it is, especially since it's typically like the largest expense besides like your payroll. So
Yeah.
and
it's amazing. Like thinking about it, obviously this is your whole business, but like how many folks don't have those details, even like I'm thinking about restaurants, like the ductwork, what's the deal with the hood fan that you get? Does the landlord going to repair or replace that? Who's
whose
responsible?
responsibility is that? Is that
Yeah.
mine? Is it theirs? I mean, those are like tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of decisions that you could
Oh,
go waste money on. And you realize that, oh, actually the landlord was responsible for the HVAC, but I just spent 50 grand upgrading it.
yeah. And now you're going to court, more legal. Yeah. It's, oh my God. I can tell you nightmare stories. And plus, restaurants, if the hood's not working, like I know a steakhouse that wasn't working. that wasn't open rather because their hood wasn't working. And what happened really was it was like kind of like a roof issue and where it's just a crappy job of where the exhaust came up and how the mushroom cap fit on top and it was lifting up from the roof and it was like, okay, who's responsible for this? And they're fighting over it. But meanwhile, the restaurant's closed.
Right, not making any money.
Thousands of dollars of revenue that are just gone. So yeah, it's huge deal. And seemingly like always an afterthought, which is obviously a massive mistake.
Yeah. Well, wrapping up here, Kyle, and guests, thanks for joining. Hopefully you heard something here that, you learned that's something new. We, recapped what we learned at ICSC Las Vegas 2024 and how we think some of those trends are going to continue here into the next year or so. And I'm sure we'll do another one of these in about 12 months and see if any of our predictions and thoughts have come true or have completely changed. But Kyle, really appreciate your time. Everybody, thanks for joining. Doesn't look like we have any questions in the queue, so we're just going to wrap this up.
Awesome. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you later.